Welcome to today's story, a gripping tale of family, trust, and resilience. Sarah and David Monroe, loving parents to their young daughter Lily, take a leap of faith by hiring a new nanny to help with Lily's special needs. At first, everything seems perfect. Evelyn, the nanny, has an impressive resume and a professional demeanor. But as Sarah starts to notice subtle changes in Lily's behavior and unsettling incidents around their home, she realizes something isn't right. What started as a hopeful addition to their family soon turns into a tense battle for their daughter's safety. Sarah's suspicions lead her down a chilling path of secrets, deception, and unthinkable challenges. And just as the Monroes think they're safe, the real fight begins. If you're watching from home, let us know where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Leave a comment below with your thoughts as we dive into this harrowing journey of protection, courage, and the power of family. The Monroe family mansion was vast, all shining floors and open spaces, with rooms that echoed if you spoke too loudly. Sarah Monroe, petite and always meticulous, walked briskly from room to room, preparing for another day in the life she had worked so hard to build for her family. Her husband, David, was kind and steady, a financial executive who had only recently started coming home before dinner time. But the brightest part of Sarah's day was always her daughter, Lily. Lily was the center of Sarah's world. Born with cerebral palsy, Lily required constant care and support, which Sarah provided with dedication. Sarah had poured her heart into ensuring that Lily would experience life to the fullest, despite the limitations imposed by her condition. And so she'd worked tirelessly to create a home that felt as safe as it did beautiful, with newly installed features like a stair lift to grant Lily the freedom to move about as she pleased. Today, the technicians had just completed the installation of the stair lift, and Lily was beaming at it, her small hands clapping in excitement. Sarah could feel her eyes tearing up watching her daughter's delight. "Look, Mommy, now I can go up and down by myself!" Lily's voice echoed with pure joy. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah replied, bending down to hug Lily. "You can explore the whole house now." David walked over, placing a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You've done everything for her, Sarah," he said softly. "You've worked so hard to make sure she has the best, but remember to take time for yourself too." Sarah simply nodded, grateful for David's words, but they didn't fully settle her nerves. Every part of her wanted to be with Lily, to be the one making every decision about her daughter's well-being, no matter how small. That evening, as the family sat down to dinner, David cleared his throat in a way that made Sarah look up immediately. He seemed almost nervous, which was rare. "Sarah, I've been thinking about finding a nanny for Lily, just to help lighten the load for you." Sarah's fork froze mid-air, and she looked at him, her brow furrowing. "A nanny?" "David, I don't need help with Lily. I've managed just fine." I know," David said quickly, his voice calm and reassuring, "but I just thought that maybe a little extra help could give you time to relax, or even just sleep more. I talked to an agency, and they found someone with experience working with children with special needs." Sarah felt her face heat up, a mixture of shock and something she couldn't quite define. Resentment, maybe? She had always been the one to make decisions regarding Lily's care, and now David was suggesting that someone else could take on that responsibility. "David, I don't know. I don't want a stranger around Lily." David reached for her hand across the table. "Sarah, I would never suggest this if I didn't think it was in Lily's best interest. Just meet her, okay? You don't have to decide anything right now." Reluctantly, Sarah nodded, though her instincts prickled. She knew she'd have to at least consider the idea. For the rest of the evening, Sarah couldn't shake the nagging feeling of unease that crept up whenever she thought about letting a stranger into her home, into Lily's life. The following afternoon, Sarah's heart skipped when the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find a woman with neatly pulled-back hair and a serious expression. Her clothes were modest and professional, and her eyes had an intense, almost clinical look to them. "Hello, Mrs. Monroe. I'm Evelyn Price," the woman said with a precise tone, holding out her hand. "David arranged for us to meet today." Sarah felt herself bristle slightly. She had agreed to the meeting, yes, but something about Evelyn's tone, so self-assured, as though she already belonged there, made Sarah's discomfort deepen. "Thank you for coming, Miss Price," Sarah replied, her voice polite but cool. She led Evelyn into the living room, where Lily sat on the sofa, her face bright with curiosity. "This must be Lily," Evelyn said, her face softening into a smile, though her eyes stayed steely. "I hear you're a very strong girl." Lily smiled, but immediately shrank closer to Sarah, wrapping a small hand around her mother's arm. Evelyn's smile didn't falter, but Sarah noticed the faintest shadow of something else flicker across her face. Disappointment? Annoyance? She couldn't be sure. "Well, let's talk about what Lily's needs are and how I might be able to support her," Evelyn continued, her voice taking on a brisk, no-nonsense tone. Sarah and David listened as Evelyn outlined her approach: strict routines, emphasis on independence, and what she called confidence-building exercises. At first glance, it sounded like everything a good nanny should offer, but Sarah's intuition continued to nag her. Something about Evelyn's demeanor felt slightly off. When Evelyn excused herself to use the restroom, Sarah turned to David, her voice low. "I don't know, David. She seems intense." David shrugged. "She's got experience with kids like Lily, Sarah. That's hard to find. Maybe she's just serious because she's so committed to her work." Sarah bit her lip, trying to brush away her reservations. David was probably right, and maybe Evelyn's intensity just meant she took her job seriously. "All right," she said finally, "but I want to be around for the first few weeks, just to see how she and Lily get along." David nodded, grateful for Sarah's willingness to consider it. And so, they decided to give Evelyn a trial period, though Sarah couldn't ignore the chill that lingered, settling quietly into the pit of her stomach. A week into Evelyn's trial period, Sarah noticed small, unsettling changes in Lily's behavior. She'd become quieter, more withdrawn, even when Evelyn wasn't around. When Sarah asked her about it, Lily simply looked away, her face tight with a sadness Sarah hadn't seen before. Meanwhile, Evelyn maintained her calm, professional exterior. She assured Sarah that she was pushing Lily toward independence, that it was all part of the process. But Sarah couldn't ignore the prickling feeling that something wasn't right. She decided to keep a closer watch, turning to the home's security cameras whenever she had to leave Evelyn and Lily alone together. One afternoon, Sarah replayed a clip on her phone, her heart racing as she watched Evelyn leading Lily down the stairs without her support vest. Evelyn stood at the bottom, arms crossed, while Lily carefully and nervously made her way down. Sarah's heart clenched as Lily stumbled, catching herself at the last second. When Sarah confronted Evelyn about it, Evelyn brushed it off with a dismissive wave. "She needs to learn not to rely on that vest so much, Mrs. Monroe. She's stronger than you think." "Maybe," Sarah said tightly, "but she also needs to be safe. You'll use the vest from now on." Evelyn's face darkened slightly, though she quickly covered it with a forced smile. "Of course, Mrs. Monroe. I'll do as you ask." Despite Evelyn's acquiescence, Sarah knew that something was wrong. The incident left her more certain than ever that she'd made a mistake, but with David's insistence and Evelyn's seeming competence, she found herself caught in a strange, paralyzing web of doubt and duty. The next morning, Sarah found herself on edge, glancing anxiously toward the living room where Evelyn and Lily sat. Evelyn had pulled out a set of flashcards, each one with a word in large block letters that she held up for Lily to read aloud. "What's this one, Lily?" Evelyn's voice was cheerful, yet there was an edge to it that Sarah couldn't quite place. Lily hesitated, squinting at the card before whispering, "Happy." "That's right, happy," Evelyn replied, her smile tight. She immediately flipped to the next card without a word of encouragement or pause, her eyes expectant. Sarah felt a pang in her chest as she watched her daughter's brow furrow. Lily seemed tense, unusually focused on Evelyn's cues, as though she were afraid of making a mistake. Later that day, while Lily was resting, Sarah took a quiet moment to speak to Evelyn privately. "I noticed you were doing flashcards with Lily. She's always loved learning, but she seemed a bit hesitant today." Sarah ventured carefully. Evelyn straightened, her face impassive. Children with Lily's challenges need discipline to develop self-assurance, Mrs. Monroe. I find that structured activities build confidence over time. The explanation sounded reasonable enough, but Sarah's instincts still flared. She nodded, deciding not to push further. But as Evelyn left the room, Sarah watched her with a renewed sense of wariness. That night, as David sat beside her on the couch, absorbed in his laptop, Sarah voiced her concerns. "David, have you noticed Lily's behavior lately? She's more withdrawn. I feel like something about Evelyn's approach isn't right," she said softly, careful not to sound accusatory. David looked up, his expression reassuring. "Sarah, I know it's hard to trust someone new with Lily, but Evelyn's only been here a couple of weeks, and Lily just needs time to adjust." "I know, but—" Sarah's voice trailed off, unsure how to convey the depth of her concern. "I think I'll look into Evelyn's background a bit more, just to be certain we've made the right choice." David sighed, nodding. "If it'll give you peace of mind, sure. But I really think Evelyn's doing well with Lily." Once David had gone to bed, Sarah turned on her phone, typing Evelyn Price into the search bar. She combed through the results, but nothing seemed to match the woman she'd hired. No previous employers, no social media profiles, no public records. It was as though Evelyn barely existed. Growing more alarmed, Sarah decided to call the agency directly the following morning. After some polite small talk, she asked if they could provide any additional information on Evelyn's experience with other families. The woman on the line hesitated, then replied, "Oh, well, Ms. Price has worked with us for a few years, but families usually don't stay in touch. She has a very disciplined style, which can be challenging for some families." "Challenging?" Sarah echoed, gripping the phone tighter. "Yes, but highly effective," the agency representative added quickly, her tone nervous. "If you have concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out." Sarah ended the call, a chill settling over her. Something was definitely wrong, but without concrete evidence, she felt stuck. She made up her mind to keep a close eye on Evelyn and Lily's interactions from here on out. A week later, Sarah received a call from an old friend, inviting her for a coffee outing. At David's encouragement, she reluctantly agreed, taking a rare moment to step out alone. However, her heart remained back at home, anxiously worried about Lily. The moment she returned, Sarah went straight to the security footage on her phone. She watched Evelyn lead Lily to the staircase without her support vest. Lily looked nervous, but Evelyn gestured sternly, prompting her to step forward. Lily made her way down, each step more wobbly than the last. Sarah's heart raced as she watched her daughter's tiny frame sway dangerously, finally stumbling and catching herself on the railing, her face pale with fright. Sarah stormed into the house and confronted Evelyn, her voice shaking with anger. "What were you doing, letting her go down the stairs without her vest?" Evelyn's expression didn't waver. "Mrs. Monroe, I understand you're concerned, but Lily needs to learn to rely on herself, not her vest. It's important she builds strength, and these small exercises encourage that." Sarah's voice dropped, fury and frustration evident. "I am the one who decides what's best for Lily, not you." Evelyn's smile tightened, but she nodded. "Understood, Mrs. Monroe. I'll follow your instructions." But as Evelyn walked away, Sarah couldn't shake the suspicion that Evelyn's words held a simmering resentment, as though she had lost some kind of battle. Sarah's conviction only grew. She had to keep an eye on Evelyn, no matter what it took. The tension reached a breaking point that evening when Sarah confronted David. "David, I can't do this anymore. Evelyn's pushing Lily too hard, and I won't let her hurt our daughter under the guise of strengthening exercises." David looked troubled but defensive. "Sarah, we agreed that Evelyn's methods might be a little firm, but they seem effective. Lily's already showing signs of improvement in her coordination." "Maybe so, but not at the cost of her safety," Sarah replied, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and desperation. "She stumbled on the stairs today because Evelyn wouldn't let her wear the vest. I want her out, David." After a tense silence, David finally nodded. "All right, but let's give her a monitored trial period this week. We'll have our family friends drop by unannounced to check on her. If there's any further issue, she's gone." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed, but her decision to monitor Evelyn closely became a personal mission. She couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was lurking beneath Evelyn's polished exterior. The following day, Sarah returned from a quick errand to find Lily quietly playing in her room, her eyes red-rimmed and face tense. Evelyn was nowhere to be seen. Kneeling beside her daughter, Sarah asked, "Lily, sweetie, are you all right?" Lily looked away, her lip quivering. "I don't like Miss Evelyn, Mommy. She makes me drink from the faucet outside and says it's building character." Her voice was barely a whisper. A rush of anger flared through Sarah. She gently hugged her daughter, reassuring her that everything would be all right, but her mind was racing. Sarah knew she couldn't put this off any longer. When Evelyn returned, Sarah confronted her, her voice ice-cold. "What is this I hear about you making my daughter drink from the yard faucet?" Evelyn looked unfazed. "I only want Lily to learn self-reliance, Mrs. Monroe. She should understand that she can survive without pampering." "That's not building character. That's cruelty," Sarah snapped, her voice trembling with fury. "Pack your things. You're done here." Evelyn's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Monroe. You think you know what's best, but you're sheltering her, making her weak." "I would rather shelter my daughter than see her hurt," Sarah replied, her voice firm. Evelyn gathered her things, her expression hardening, but as she turned to leave, she looked back at Sarah with a chilling smile. "This isn't over, Mrs. Monroe. Some lessons need to be taught, whether you agree or not." After Evelyn was gone, Sarah felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders. She turned back to Lily, vowing silently to protect her daughter from anyone who would dare harm her. But even as she resolved to move forward, a part of her feared that Evelyn's words were more than just a threat. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. In the days following Evelyn's departure, Sarah felt herself slowly relaxing, a sense of peace settling back into the household. Lily was happier too, her cheerful nature returning as she played around the house without fear. For the first time in weeks, Sarah allowed herself to believe that life could return to normal. But her relief was short-lived. One afternoon, while picking Lily up from her special needs playgroup, Sarah's heart froze when she spotted a familiar figure across the parking lot. Standing near the tree line, half-shadowed, was Evelyn, watching them with a cold, unreadable expression. "Mommy, can we go home now?" Lily's small voice broke Sarah out of her trance. "Yes, sweetheart, let's go." Sarah gripped her daughter's hand tighter, her mind racing as she led Lily quickly to the car. That evening, Sarah didn't mention the sighting to David, wanting to spare him the worry. Instead, she decided to keep a watchful eye out and document anything suspicious. She kept her phone close, ready to call for help at the first sign of trouble. 2 days later, Sarah's growing anxiety reached a peak when she noticed strange things around the house. Objects were misplaced. Lights that she was sure she'd turned off were suddenly on again, and Lily's toys seemed to move from room to room on their own. One afternoon, as she tidied Lily's playroom, Sarah felt a prickling sensation along the back of her neck, like she was being watched. She turned quickly, her heart pounding, but saw nothing unusual. Yet, the feeling lingered, gnawing at her, making her feel like an intruder in her own home. In the middle of the night, Sarah woke with a start, hearing faint footsteps outside her bedroom door. She held her breath, listening as the quiet creak of floorboards echoed through the hallway. For a moment, she thought it might be David, restless in his sleep, but a glance at his side of the bed confirmed he was still there, sleeping soundly. Summoning her courage, Sarah slipped out of bed, carefully opened her bedroom door, and peered down the hallway. Just as she was about to turn back, she saw a shadow flicker at the end of the hall, a figure moving toward Lily's room. Her blood ran cold. Barely daring to breathe, she stepped out, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Who's there?" The shadow paused, then slowly turned. In the dim light, Sarah recognized Evelyn, her eyes dark with a disturbing intensity. She smiled, an unsettling smile that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. You're trespassing. I'll call the police, Sarah stammered, reaching for her phone. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice low and calm. I told you, Sarah. This isn't over. You need to understand that what I'm doing is for Lily's good. You're only holding her back. Before Sarah could respond, Evelyn turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness, as though she were a ghost. Trembling, Sarah called the police, explaining the situation in hushed tones while clutching Lily, who was thankfully still fast asleep. When the officers arrived, they found no sign of Evelyn. After searching the perimeter and reviewing the home's security system, which showed no recorded entry, the officers suggested it might have been Sarah's imagination, that the stress of recent events was playing tricks on her. Sarah nodded politely, but inside she knew what she'd seen. Evelyn had been there, and she was not going to give up easily. The following morning, Sarah sat down with David, finally confiding everything she had seen. She described the sighting in the parking lot, the strange disturbances around the house, and last night's encounter. David listened in shocked silence, his face growing pale as he absorbed her words. Sarah, he said quietly, are you absolutely sure it was her? I know what I saw, David, she replied, her voice firm. I wouldn't make this up. Evelyn was in our house. She was standing right outside Lily's door. David sighed, rubbing his temples. This has gone too far. I'll contact the police myself and request extra patrols around our house. And I'll hire private security if it comes to that. But we can't let her terrorize us like this. Sarah felt a wave of relief, her confidence bolstered by David's resolve. Yet a part of her knew that Evelyn's determination wouldn't be so easily thwarted. That afternoon, David reached out to a private investigator, asking him to dig into Evelyn's background and uncover any possible leads. As the investigation proceeded, Sarah learned disturbing details about Evelyn's past. The investigator uncovered scattered reports of similar incidents from families she'd worked with, families whose children had experienced emotional trauma, families who later realized they'd been manipulated into silence. While no formal charges were ever filed, the records showed a disturbing pattern. With a sense of grim determination, Sarah and David arranged for a restraining order, hoping it would serve as a deterrent. They explained the situation to Lily as best they could, telling her that she should never speak to Evelyn if she saw her again, and that her safety was the most important thing. Days passed in a tense waiting game, with Sarah double-checking every lock and frequently checking on Lily. Life took on a surreal quality, as though the world outside their home had shrunk to a single goal, protecting their daughter from an invisible threat. Then, one evening, just as Sarah was beginning to believe they might have succeeded in deterring Evelyn, the phone rang. The caller ID displayed an unknown number. Hesitating, Sarah picked up. A familiar, cold voice spoke. Sarah, you can't keep me away forever. I'll be seeing you very soon. Heart pounding, Sarah slammed the phone down and immediately called the police. They assured her they would send someone to check in on the house, but the feeling of dread continued to grow. As she hung up, she heard Lily calling from her bedroom. Sarah hurried to her daughter's side, finding her curled up in bed, her face pale with worry. "Mommy, is everything okay?" Lily asked, her voice small and frightened. Sarah forced a smile, tucking a stray strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "Yes, honey, everything is just fine. We're safe here, I promise." But even as she said the words, she felt the weight of doubt pressing down on her. That night, while David was out of town on a business trip, Sarah stayed up late, her nerves too frazzled to let her sleep. The silence in the house felt oppressive, every creak and shadow putting her on edge. She wandered from room to room, checking the doors and windows, making sure every lock was secure. Suddenly, she heard a noise from the back patio. A faint scratching, followed by the low creak of the sliding glass door. Heart hammering, Sarah grabbed her phone, dialing the security team, her fingers shaking as she whispered her location. Before she could finish, the door swung open, and Evelyn stepped inside, her face set in a grim mask. She closed the door quietly, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Sarah. "Hello, Sarah," Evelyn said, her voice soft but edged with menace. "I told you this wasn't over." Sarah backed away, struggling to keep her voice steady. "You need to leave, Evelyn, right now. The police are on their way." Evelyn smiled, a twisted smile that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "I've come to show you what real strength looks like. You're so determined to shield Lily, but you're making her weak. I'm here to help her." With a sudden surge of courage, Sarah stepped forward, her voice filled with a strength she didn't know she possessed. "You don't get to make those decisions for my daughter. I know what's best for her, and I will protect her from you, no matter what it takes." For a moment, Evelyn looked taken aback, but then her expression hardened, and she lunged forward, reaching out towards Sarah. Just as she closed the distance, the sound of sirens pierced the silence, red and blue lights flashing through the window. Evelyn froze, her face twisting with fury as the police stormed in. She resisted as they handcuffed her voice a snarl as she hurled accusations at Sarah. But Sarah didn't hear them. Her focus was solely on Lily, who had been watching from the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with fear. Rushing to her daughter's side, Sarah wrapped her arms around Lily, holding her close. "It's over, Lily," she whispered, her voice shaky but filled with relief. "She's gone. You're safe now." The morning after Evelyn's arrest, the Monroe household was quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by an air of tense relief. Sarah barely slept, her mind replaying the confrontation over and over, each moment burned into her memory. She clutched her coffee cup tightly, staring out the window, struggling to come to terms with the chaos Evelyn had unleashed on their lives. David sat beside her at the kitchen table, a hand on her shoulder. "Sarah," he said softly, "we need to give our statements to the police today. They want us to come in and go over everything that happened." Sarah nodded, her thoughts flickering to Lily, who was still asleep. "I'll stay as long as they need," she replied. "I want to make sure Evelyn can't get anywhere near us or anyone else again." The trip to the police station was both draining and cathartic. Sarah relayed each detail carefully, hoping her account would help build a case against Evelyn. She felt a strange mix of relief and sadness, sharing her story with people who could finally take action, but haunted by the knowledge of the trauma her family had endured. After several hours, Sarah and David returned home, exhausted but united in their determination. They reassured Lily, explaining that the mean Nanny would never be back. Though Lily seemed comforted, Sarah could still see the flicker of fear in her daughter's eyes, a reminder of how deeply Evelyn's influence had shaken her. Later that week, a detective named Officer King reached out to Sarah with news on Evelyn's background. As she sat in her living room, gripping the phone tightly, the details he shared made her blood run cold. "We've uncovered complaints from several other families in the state," Officer King said, his voice somber. "Though no charges were ever filed, these families reported similar instances of psychological manipulation, strict discipline bordering on abuse, and even cases of isolation. It appears Evelyn was able to leave each position before things escalated." Sarah's stomach twisted, her mind racing. How could she keep doing this? Why weren't there any charges filed? "Unfortunately, these situations can be hard to prosecute," he replied. "Families with young children often prioritize moving forward and focusing on their recovery. In many cases, Evelyn left on her own accord, slipping away before things escalated to the point where legal action was possible." Sarah's hand shook as she ended the call. Evelyn's behavior was more calculated and insidious than she had realized. She wasn't just a harsh nanny. She was someone who thrived on control, someone who had escaped justice over and over again. Determined to protect others from Evelyn's manipulation, Sarah began reaching out to the other families, connecting with them to build a united front. Together, they agreed to testify and support one another, hoping to ensure Evelyn would be held accountable at last. In the days leading up to Evelyn's preliminary hearing, Sarah found herself caught in a whirlwind of preparations. The prosecutor assigned to the case was thorough, combing through Sarah's story and the testimonies of other families to build a strong case. As the date of the hearing approached, Sarah's anxiety deepened. She couldn't escape the nagging feeling that Evelyn wasn't finished with them, that her presence lingered like a shadow over their lives. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. The envelope was plain, with no return address, but Sarah's heart froze when she recognized the handwriting. Her hands shook as she tore it open, her eyes scanning the familiar script. "Sarah, you may think you've won, but there are many ways to teach lessons. I never give up on my convictions." The ominous note renewed Sarah's fear. She handed it to the detective on the case, hoping it would add weight to the charges against Evelyn. But the fear lingered, making her hyper-vigilant as she went about her days, determined to shield Lily from any further harm. As the family awaited the court proceedings, Sarah and David focused on helping Lily regain her confidence. They arranged for family counseling sessions where Lily could express her fears and gradually process the experiences she'd endured. Sarah and David also used the sessions to work through their own pain and guilt, recognizing the importance of supporting one another through the healing process. During one of their sessions, the therapist suggested a small exercise to help Lily cope. "Let's create a safe space in the house," she said gently, "a place where Lily can feel secure whenever she feels scared or needs comfort." Taking the advice to heart, Sarah transformed one of their spare rooms into a cozy, secure retreat for Lily, complete with her favorite toys, soft blankets, and calming lights. Lily seemed to love the idea, and over time, the room became a symbol of comfort and protection for her, a small but vital step in rebuilding her trust and sense of safety. As the days passed, Sarah noticed Lily's smile beginning to return, though it took time for the laughter to follow. Slowly but surely, their bond deepened, rooted in Sarah's unwavering love and dedication to her daughter's well-being. The day of the trial arrived, casting a heavy tension over the household. Sarah and David sat in the courtroom, their hands clasped tightly together as they listened to the testimonies of other families. Each story was hauntingly similar to their own: children forced into rigid routines, punished for showing emotions, and isolated from their parents under the guise of character building. When it was finally Sarah's turn to testify, she stood with a mixture of fear and resolve. She described each chilling encounter, the manipulation and cruelty Evelyn had subjected Lily to, and the deep scars it had left on their family. As she spoke, she felt the support of the other families in the room, a collective strength that bolstered her courage. Together, they were a united front, determined to prevent Evelyn from hurting anyone else. The judge listened intently, and after several days of testimony, the court found Evelyn guilty of numerous counts, from child endangerment to psychological abuse. The sentencing, though not as long as Sarah had hoped, still offered a sense of justice. Evelyn would be unable to harm another child for a very long time. With Evelyn now officially behind bars, a profound sense of relief settled over Sarah. Yet the journey wasn't over. The family's recovery was ongoing, and she knew it would take time for them all to fully heal. But knowing Evelyn was gone, that she couldn't reach Lily anymore, was a powerful step toward closure. As the months passed, Sarah watched her daughter's spirit return, her giggles filling the house once again. She cherished each small victory, from Lily conquering a new skill to showing confidence in new situations. They took small steps toward rebuilding normalcy, each one a testament to their resilience. David, too, grew more protective, vowing to work with Sarah on every decision involving Lily's care. The experience had changed them, deepening their commitment to one another and their family. Together, they began making plans to expand their circle of support, surrounding Lily with positive role models and influences. On one sunny afternoon, Sarah found herself watching Lily play in the backyard, her laughter echoing as she chased bubbles floating through the air. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah allowed herself to breathe deeply, to bask in the beauty of her daughter's joy and innocence. "Mommy!" Lily called, waving her over. "Come play with me!" Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. She joined her daughter, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the weight of fear lifting, replaced by the light of hope and healing. With Evelyn finally behind bars, The Monroe family began the delicate process of rebuilding their lives. The house, once a place of tension and anxiety, gradually transformed back into a sanctuary of warmth and safety. But beneath the relief, Sarah knew that healing would take time, especially for Lily, who had been directly affected by Evelyn's manipulation. One afternoon, Sarah sat down with Lily in their new, safe space room, surrounded by soft blankets and Lily's favorite stuffed animals. Lily, now more comfortable opening up, looked at her mother with an expression that was both curious and cautious. "Mommy," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "why did Miss Evelyn get so mad at me?" Sarah paused, carefully choosing her words. "Sweetheart, Miss Evelyn wasn't a kind person. Sometimes people have a hard time understanding that everyone is special just the way they are. She thought her way was the only way, but she was wrong." Lily nodded slowly, her little fingers fidgeting with her stuffed bear. "But I'm okay now, right?" Sarah's heart ached, but she reached out, gently squeezing Lily's hands. "Yes, my love, you're safe. And Daddy and I will always be here to make sure you stay safe." As they talked, Sarah felt a wave of relief. The conversation marked a step forward, a sign that Lily was beginning to feel secure again. Every small step they took together toward healing filled Sarah with gratitude, reinforcing her commitment to protecting and nurturing her family. The following months were dedicated to family time, focusing on activities that brought them closer together. Sarah and David made a point to be fully present, planning weekly outings to parks, museums, and movie nights that gave Lily new and joyful experiences. David's own transformation was evident. No longer willing to leave major decisions solely to Sarah, he took an active role in every aspect of Lily's care. He even started reading up on childhood development and participated in family therapy sessions, eager to understand the best ways to support his daughter's growth and well-being. One evening, after putting Lily to bed, Sarah and David sat on the porch, reflecting on the journey they'd taken together. "I feel like I've failed both of you," David said softly, his voice laced with regret. "I wanted to help, but I didn't see what was right in front of me. I put too much trust in someone who didn't deserve it." Sarah reached over, holding his hand. "You didn't fail us, David. We were both trying to do what was best for Lily. This experience has taught us both to trust our instincts and to work together. And I think it's made us stronger." David nodded, squeezing her hand with a small smile. "From now on, every decision about Lily is something we'll make together." Their promise to each other marked a turning point. Together, they were committed to ensuring Lily's happiness and safety, and they knew they'd be stronger as a family because of it. As the months passed, Lily continued to flourish, her laughter and confidence gradually returning. She joined a small playgroup for children with special needs, where she made friends and discovered her love for painting. Sarah and David encouraged her creative spirit, watching with pride as Lily painted vivid scenes filled with color and imagination. One day, Lily showed her parents a new painting, a large, bright sun surrounded by a field of flowers. "This is our garden," she explained, pointing to each detail, "and here's you and Daddy and me." Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. The painting symbolized more than just a creative expression. It was a reflection of Lily's restored sense of security and happiness. In that moment, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that Lily's heart was healing, slowly but surely. David, too, was moved, and he suggested they create a real garden in the backyard. As a family, they spent weekends planting flowers, watching them grow just as Lily had. It became a ritual, a testament to their resilience and the beauty that could emerge after hardship. One quiet afternoon, Sarah took a moment to herself in the garden, sitting on the bench beneath the flowering tree they had planted as a family. She let her mind wander, reflecting on the events that had brought them to this point. The experience with Evelyn had left scars, but it had also reshaped her understanding of strength, resilience, and trust. She realized that she'd found a deeper courage within herself, a fierceness that had allowed her to stand up against Evelyn and protect her family. In the weeks following the trial, Sarah had connected with other parents affected by Evelyn, forming a support group to offer comfort, share stories, and encourage healing. Through these conversations, Sarah discovered that her ordeal had given her a new purpose: to advocate for other families facing similar challenges, ensuring that no one else would have to go through what they had endured alone. As she sat in the garden, watching the flowers sway in the breeze, Sarah felt a sense of fulfillment. She had survived, grown stronger, and found a renewed sense of peace. And she knew that as long as she stayed vigilant and trusted her instincts, she could keep her family safe. On the one-year anniversary of Evelyn's arrest, Sarah and David planned a family celebration, a small picnic in the garden, surrounded by the flowers they'd planted together. They spent the day laughing, playing games, and savoring the simple joy of being together. As the sun began to set, Lily ran up to her parents, holding out a dandelion she'd plucked from the ground. "Make a wish, Mommy," she said, her face glowing with excitement. Sarah took the dandelion, closing her eyes for a moment before blowing its seeds into the breeze. She didn't need to make a wish. Everything she had ever wanted was right here with her family. The experience had taught her so much about love, courage, and the power of unity. And though they had faced a dark and challenging time, they had emerged from it stronger, their bond deeper than ever. As they sat together watching the sunset, Sarah felt a quiet, enduring peace settle within her heart. She looked at David and Lily, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together, united, resilient, and filled with hope. In this final section, the Monroes come full circle, finding healing and strength in their unity as a family. Through shared experiences and new traditions, they create a life filled with love, resilience, and security, turning their ordeal into a foundation for growth and renewal. This conclusion brings closure, while also offering a hopeful look into their future, emphasizing the themes of resilience, family, and the enduring power of love. Let me know if you'd like further development on specific scenes, or if you're ready to bring all parts together into a cohesive draft. 1 year after their celebration in the garden, life in the Monroe household had settled into a peaceful rhythm. The days were filled with small, happy routines, each moment an affirmation of how far they had come. The past was still a part of their lives, but it no longer overshadowed them. Instead, it served as a reminder of their resilience and the strength they'd found in one another. In the garden, Sarah often took moments to herself, a quiet ritual she'd adopted to reflect on their journey. She thought about the many ways her family had grown, not only in overcoming trauma, but in discovering joy and connection anew. The support group she'd started with other parents had blossomed, with members meeting monthly to share stories and support each other through their challenges. Through her work with the group, Sarah found purpose and healing. She'd seen families transformed by the simple act of sharing their stories, finding courage in knowing they weren't alone. And every time she spoke with another parent, she felt a renewed commitment to advocacy, a drive to protect children and support parents who, like her, had faced the unthinkable. With Lily growing more confident each day, Sarah and David began exploring new opportunities for her development. Lily's love for art had continued to flourish, and one of the support group parents suggested an art class designed specifically for children with special needs. At first, Sarah was hesitant, concerned about how Lily would handle the unfamiliar environment. But with David's encouragement and Lily's own eager enthusiasm, they decided to enroll her. On the first day of class, Sarah felt her nerves return, memories of Evelyn's rigid lessons and harsh methods briefly flashing through her mind. But as she watched Lily immerse herself in her painting, laughing and chattering with the other children, Sarah's anxiety faded. She realized that this was the true path for Lily's growth, one filled with warmth, encouragement, and the freedom to be herself. The experience marked a turning point, a symbol of their family's embrace of new beginnings. Lily's smile became a constant reminder to Sarah of the beauty that could bloom from a place of trust and love. Sarah's work with the support group grew into something more significant over time. Together, they organized workshops for parents, bringing in child psychologists, teachers, and advocates to educate families on protecting their children's well-being. One evening, Sarah was invited to speak at a local community center where she shared her family's story. Her voice shook at first, but as she looked out over the audience, she found strength in their attentive faces. By the end of her talk, people approached her to express their gratitude and share their own stories of resilience. Sarah realized then that their journey had led her to something greater than herself, a mission to support and protect vulnerable children and to empower parents to trust their instincts. She felt a deep gratitude for her family, for David and Lily, who had inspired her to use her voice in a way she never thought possible. On a quiet evening at home, David surprised Sarah with a small gift, a framed photo of their family in the garden, taken during their first anniversary celebration. In the picture, Lily's face glowed with happiness as she held a dandelion in her hand, the seeds floating into the air around her. Beneath the photo, David had inscribed a single line, "Together, we are stronger." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she looked at the photo, the memories of their journey and the love they had cultivated flooding her heart. She placed the frame on the mantel, a permanent reminder of the strength they discovered as a family. As they sat together, watching the fire crackle softly, Sarah turned to David, a quiet gratitude in her voice. "We've been through so much, but I wouldn't change any of it. It brought us here, to this life, this family." David nodded, wrapping his arm around her. "And we'll keep moving forward, one day at a time." As spring arrived, the Monroe family planted new flowers in the garden, adding splashes of color to the green landscape. Lily's laughter filled the air as she helped dig small holes for each plant, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Standing in the sunlight, Sarah felt a renewed sense of peace and purpose. She looked at Lily, who was happier and stronger than ever, and at David, whose steadfast support had been her anchor through everything. They had faced darkness together, and they had emerged from it with a bond unbreakable by any hardship. As she knelt down to help Lily with a stubborn patch of soil, Sarah smiled. The future felt bright, filled with endless possibilities for growth, happiness, and love. They would continue to grow as a family, rooted in resilience and nourished by the lessons they had learned along the way. In the end, their story wasn't defined by the fear they had faced, but by the strength they had cultivated together. And as they stood together in their garden, surrounded by the beauty they had nurtured, Sarah knew that they would always be safe and strong, bound by love and the unshakable resilience that had carried them through.